Snow had been falling over the village of Hollybrook since early afternoon, the gentle kind of snowfall that turned the world soft and quiet. By evening, every rooftop was covered in a smooth, untouched blanket of white. Every chimney puffed out curls of warm smoke, and every lantern along the cobblestone streets glowed through a halo of drifting snowflakes. It was Christmas Eve, and the entire village seemed to be holding its breath in peaceful anticipation. The Bennett household stood at the very end of Mistletoe Lane, a small brick cottage with ivy running up its sides and windows that always glowed golden in winter. Inside, all was warm, still, and dreamlike. 8-year-old Oliver Bennett pressed his face against the frosted window. His breath clouded the glass as he stared out at the snowy night, searching the sky for the faintest glimpse of magic. He loved Christmas more dearly than any other day of the year. Not just the presents, although those certainly mattered to him, but the feeling of it, the way the world seemed kinder, the way strangers wished each other joy, the way even the coldest air felt a bit warmer when the church bells rang. Behind him, his older sister Margaret, 12 years old and endlessly patient with her little brother, sat beside the fireplace with a book on her lap. "Oliver," she said gently, "you won't see anything if you fog up the window like that." Oliver wiped the glass with his sleeve, but immediately pressed close again. "I'm not going to bed," he insisted. "Not until I see him." Margaret smiled. "Nobody ever sees him." "You don't know that." "I do," she said, lifting her chin like an expert. "Papa says Santa only appears when everyone is asleep. If you're awake, the magic hides." Oliver crossed his arms. "Then I'll pretend to sleep." Margaret laughed, and the sound was soft and warm, like cinnamon drifting in the air. Across the room, their parents prepared for the night. Their mother placed the last of the gingerbread cookies beside the fireplace, one for Santa, one for each reindeer, and one extra just in case. As Oliver always insisted, their father adjusted another log in the hearth, sparks flying upward like tiny golden stars. "Come along, children," he said. "Bedtime." Oliver groaned. Margaret gently closed her book. The walk up the wooden staircase felt heavier than usual for Oliver. Part of him feared that if he fell asleep too quickly, he might miss something extraordinary. A jingle, a shadow crossing the moon, a flash of silver sleigh runners. But another part of him, the part warmed by cocoa and comfort, was already beginning to grow drowsy. In their shared bedroom, Margaret blew out the bedside candle, leaving the room illuminated only by the moonlight shimmering across the snow outside. "Margaret," Oliver whispered. "Yes? Do you think he's really coming?" She hesitated, but only for a moment. "Yes," she said softly, "I do." Oliver smiled into the darkness. Then Margaret added, "And he brings a little bit of magic with him wherever he goes." Oliver's eyes widened. "What kind of magic?" "The kind that makes even grown-ups believe again." The wind outside brushed softly against the shutters. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell chimed the hour. Oliver felt warmth settle over him. Not the heat from the fireplace downstairs, but something gentler, like a soft blanket made from hope. He didn't know that, far above the village, beyond the drifting clouds and shimmering moonlight, something was indeed stirring. A faint jingle, a whisper of cold wind, a shape moving in the night. And though Oliver did not see it, not yet, the magic had already begun. Chapter 2. The Sound Upon the Roof. Night deepened over Hollybrook, and the snowfall softened to a delicate whisper. The village rested beneath its white quilt, windows glowing faintly like lanterns placed under blankets of snow. All seemed peaceful, still, and perfectly ordinary. But in the Bennett household, Oliver Bennett lay wide awake. Margaret's quiet breathing came from the other bed, steady and calm. The moon shone through the frosted window, throwing pale shapes across the wooden floor. Outside, an owl hooted once before settling on a branch. Oliver squeezed his eyes shut, then opened them again. "What if I miss him?" he whispered to himself. He sat up slowly, careful not to wake Margaret. He listened, first to the quiet creaking of the old cottage, then to the soft murmur of wind moving over the snow. Nothing. He let out a disappointed sigh, just as he lay back down, pulling the quilt up to his chin. Something changed. A faint sound. Ching. Oliver sat upright again, eyes wide. That wasn't the wind. He slipped out of bed and padded across the wooden floor in his wool socks. The boards creaked softly, but Margaret continued sleeping peacefully. Oliver went to the window and pressed his nose gently to the cold glass. Outside, the world glittered beneath the moonlight. The rooftops were perfectly smooth, untouched, except his breath caught. There, on the snow-covered roof of the cottage opposite theirs, he saw something move. A shadow. No, two, and then a third. Oliver blinked rapidly. Were those hooves? He leaned closer. Yes, 4 hooves, then 8. And oh, the silhouettes were unmistakable. Slender legs, proud antlers, and bodies that shimmered faintly in the moonlight. "Reindeer," Oliver whispered. But before he could gasp again, something else appeared behind them. A sleigh. A real sleigh. Not large and heavy like those used by farmers, but elegant. Curved runners that glinted silver, a body carved with constellations, and reins that sparkled as if woven from starlight. And climbing out of the sleigh, Oliver's heart almost stopped. A man stepped into view. He was dressed in a long red coat lined with white fur, and his boots sank softly into the snow. His beard glimmered in the moonlight like freshly fallen frost. He carried a large sack slung easily over his shoulder. Oliver's breath fogged against the glass. "It's him," he whispered. "It's really him. Santa Claus. He was here. On their very street." Oliver pressed so hard against the window that the glass felt even colder. Santa moved with a grace Oliver did not expect. Despite his round belly and thick coat, he was light on his feet, almost floating across the roof. When he laughed quietly to himself, an amused rumble, it was soft and warm, as though he didn't want to disturb the sleeping world below. Oliver watched, hardly daring to blink. Then Santa reached the end of the roof and disappeared from sight. Oliver gasped, "He's coming here." At that exact moment, thump, something landed on their own roof. Then came the unmistakable sound. Jingle, 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 reindeer bells. Oliver's heart pounded so loudly he thought it might wake the whole house. He raced back to bed and dove under the covers, trembling with excitement, fear, and wonder all at once. Above him, on the roof, came the soft crunch of hooves moving through snow. Then a heavier sound. Footsteps, measured, calm, familiar. He squeezed his eyes shut. "Be asleep," he told himself. "Be asleep, even if you aren't." The footsteps paused directly above their room. Then, shift, thump, something slid down the chimney. Oliver clutched the blanket. The air seemed to shimmer. A faint golden glow flickered beneath the bedroom door. And in the stillness of the house, the tiniest, warmest sound drifted upward from the sitting room downstairs. Ho, ho, ho. Chapter 3. Down the Chimney. For several long moments, Oliver lay perfectly still beneath his blanket, hardly daring to breathe. His heart thumped so loudly he was certain, even through the old wooden floor, even through the thick Christmas stockings hung by the hearth, that Santa himself must hear it. The golden glow beneath the bedroom door flickered once more. Then he heard it. A soft shuffle, a gentle brushing sound, and then thump, crunch, whoosh. The unmistakable sound of boots landing gracefully upon the hearth. Oliver's breath caught. "He's really here," he mouthed silently. He slipped out of bed as quietly as his trembling legs would allow. Margaret stirred but did not wake. With slow, cautious movements, Oliver tiptoed toward the door, each step creaking faintly beneath his socks. When he reached the door, he knelt down and pressed his eye to the tiny gap between the wood and the floorboards. And what he saw made his entire body warm with wonder. Downstairs, the living room glowed with golden light, not from the fire, which now only glimmered as warm embers, but from Santa himself. His red coat shimmered as though dusted with stardust. His beard glowed softly like snow bathed in moonlight. A small flurry of sparkles fell from his coat as he stepped fully out of the chimney, brushing soot off his gloves. "Ah, good," Santa whispered to himself, his voice warm and rich. "A tidy hearth makes the landing much easier." He leaned his large sack against the wall. It swayed slightly and made the faintest jingling sound, as if many tiny bells were hidden inside. Oliver's eyes widened. This was no ordinary bag. It seemed deeper than it was tall, as though it contained not just gifts, but the very magic of Christmas. Santa walked softly across the wooden floor. He moved with surprising grace, especially for someone of his round shape. Each step seemed to make the room warmer. He approached the small table near the fireplace, where the Bennett family had left the traditional Christmas offering. Milk, gingerbread, a single carrot for the reindeer. Santa's eyes twinkled. "Well now, isn't that thoughtful?" He picked up a gingerbread man and examined it with great seriousness before taking a bite so small and delicate that Oliver nearly laughed. Mmm. Santa hummed approvingly, crumbs in his beard. Mrs. Bennett always did have a fine hand for spices. He set the milk down after a slow, contented sip and wiped his beard with the back of his glove. Oliver, still watching through the crack, felt something warm blossom in his chest. Santa wasn't just magical, he was kind, gentle, fond of the small things. Just then Santa turned. Oliver froze. Santa's eyes scanned the room. For a heartbeat, Oliver thought Santa had seen him, but instead Santa smiled at the stockings hanging above the fireplace. "Well then," he whispered, "to work." He reached into the sack. Oliver leaned forward, holding his breath. Santa pulled out a beautifully carved wooden train for Oliver, its wheels painted a deep forest green, its chimney topped with a little brass bell. He placed it gently into Oliver's stocking. Then he pulled out another gift, this one wrapped in deep blue paper with a silver ribbon for Margaret. It looked like a book, thick and promising. "Perfect," Santa murmured. He moved to the Christmas tree, and as he passed it, something remarkable happened. The dusty branches lifted. The ornaments straightened themselves. The star atop the tree glowed anew. Santa hadn't touched a single thing. Oliver's mouth fell open in awe. This was real magic. As Santa placed a few final surprises beneath the tree, he paused, looking around the quiet room. He whispered something Oliver could barely hear. "May this home always know warmth." He touched the edge of the mantel with 2 fingers. A faint golden shimmer spread across the room, like a blessing. Then Santa returned to the hearth, preparing to ascend the chimney. Oliver's heart sank. He didn't want Santa to go. Not yet. Not before saying something, anything. He rose slowly, his hand hovering over the doorknob. Should he open it? Should he speak? Should he run downstairs and embrace him? His fingers curled around the doorknob. Just then, Santa paused. He turned his head slightly, as though listening. Oliver froze again. A long, quiet moment passed. Then Santa whispered softly, almost knowingly, "Sleep well, Oliver." Oliver's breath caught in his throat. "He knows," he mouthed silently. "He knows I'm here." Santa stepped into the fireplace once more. The golden shimmer surrounded him like a soft wind, with a gentle laugh. Ho, ho, ho. He lifted upward and vanished into the chimney. A gust of warm air brushed under the door, and then... Silence. Oliver stayed frozen for nearly a full minute before slowly creeping back to bed. He slipped under the covers, trembling from head to toe. Not in fear, but in wonder. Santa had come. He had seen everything. He had spoken his name. And as Oliver drifted into the warmest sleep of his life, the last thing he remembered was the faint sound of sleigh bells fading into the winter sky. Chapter 4. The sleigh in the moonlight morning came slowly to Hollybrook. Not with brightness, winter mornings rarely did, but with a gentle blue glow that slipped softly between the curtains and cast pale shadows over the Bennett children's bedroom. Margaret awoke first. She stretched, rubbed her eyes, and blinked at the quiet room. "Oliver?" she whispered. Her brother lay perfectly still, bundled tightly in his blanket, his hair rumpled as though he had been rolling in dreams all night. But Margaret could see it instantly. He was smiling in his sleep. She tiptoed to the window and looked outside. The world was bright and white, glittering beneath the early sun. "It snowed even more," she murmured. A moment later, Oliver stirred. His eyes fluttered open, and for a heartbeat, confusion clouded them. Then, everything returned. The sleigh, Santa's coat, the wooden train, the way the Christmas tree had come alive, and the soft whisper, "Sleep well, Oliver." Oliver shot upright. "Margaret, Margaret, he was here." Margaret laughed. "Of course he was. It's Christmas morning." "No, I mean I saw him. I heard him." Margaret paused mid-smile. "You... what?" Oliver nodded urgently. "He came down the chimney." "I watched through the crack under the door," Margaret gasped. "Oliver Bennett, you didn't." He puffed out his chest proudly. "I did, and he... Margaret, he talked to me. Well, sort of." They looked at each other. Then, without another word, they raced down the stairs. The living room looked almost dreamlike. The Christmas tree glowed with a warmth that seemed to come from inside the wood itself. The ornaments sparkled. The star at the top shone soft and steady. The milk glass was empty. The carrot had vanished, and the gingerbread crumbs were scattered in a perfect little trail. Then Oliver saw it. His stocking, stuffed to the brim. He ran forward and tugged out the wooden train, smooth, polished, perfect. "It's real," he whispered, "all of it." Margaret pulled out her own gift, a thick book wrapped in blue paper. She opened it slowly. Inside, in golden lettering, were the words, "To Margaret, who believes in quiet things, Merry Christmas." Her eyes widened. "Oh, Oliver," she breathed. He really was here. Their parents arrived moments later, sleepy but smiling, and soon the whole living room filled with warmth, laughter, and rustling paper. But Oliver kept stealing glances toward the window. Not at the snow, not at the rooftops. At the sky. Because he knew something that none of them did. Something he hadn't yet shared. Santa had seen him. Santa had spoken to him. Santa had known he was awake. And Oliver felt something stirring in his chest. Something that grew bigger each time he looked at the sky. "He's still out there," Oliver whispered. He pressed his hand to the window, the glass cold beneath his palm. "I know he is." Because deep in the snowy forest, beyond Hollybrook, far above the rooftops and drifting clouds, a sleigh glided silently through the pale morning light. Its runners brushed the frozen air with sparks of silver. The reindeer galloped gracefully across the sky, and Santa Claus, still delivering his final Christmas blessings to distant cottages and lonely forests, lifted his head as though listening. He smiled, a knowing smile, a warm smile. "Well done, Oliver," he murmured to the wind. Then, with a flick of his reins, the sleigh soared higher, cutting across the shining winter sky. Chapter 5: The Wish Upon the Winter Wind. The rest of Christmas Day unfolded in a warm, joyful blur. The Bennett family enjoyed a breakfast of cinnamon porridge and honey cream. While the fireplace crackled merrily, Margaret sat curled in her favorite armchair, already deeply absorbed in her new book. Oliver drove his wooden train along the floorboards, creating elaborate tracks that wound beneath the tree and around chair legs. But even in his happiest moments, a part of him kept drifting back to the night before, to the sleigh, to the bells, to Santa's soft footsteps on the roof, and most of all, to the quiet words spoken into the stillness. "Sleep well, Oliver." He hadn't imagined it. He knew he hadn't. When afternoon came, Oliver bundled himself into his coat and boots and ran outside. The world was dazzling. The snow sparkled like crushed diamonds beneath the pale winter sun, and the rooftops glowed in the soft daylight. Oliver trudged through the snow toward the small hill behind the cottage, his breath forming clouds before his face. At the top of the hill, he stopped. The forest beyond Hollybrook looked like something from a painting. Tall pines stood still and silent, their branches heavy with fresh snow. A single robin hopped along a branch, puffed up like a tiny red lantern. Oliver cupped his hands around his mouth. "Thank you," he called toward the sky. His voice echoed faintly over the treetops. "Thank you for the train, and for letting me see you." Of course, Oliver didn't expect anyone to answer, but something did happen. A breeze lifted. Soft, gentle, warm despite the winter cold. It brushed Oliver's cheeks the way a hand brushes away a tear. He closed his eyes. In the hum of the wind, he thought he heard something. A whisper, a breath, a familiar warmth. Not words, not exactly, but a feeling of being seen, of being known, of being part of something bigger than Hollybrook, bigger than Christmas morning, bigger than all the presents in the world, something ancient, something kind, something magical. Oliver opened his eyes again. The wind had quieted. The robin flew deeper into the woods. All was still. He pressed his mitten to his heart. "I'll make a wish," he whispered. "A simple wish, a small wish, a Christmas wish. I wish that Santa will come back next year and that I'll hear his bells again." He paused, then added, "And I hope he knows how much it meant." The forest rustled softly, almost like a sigh. Oliver turned to go back home, his boots crunching in the snow. his heart warm in a way he didn't have words for. As he started down the hill, a glint caught his eye. Something shimmered at the base of a pine tree, small, golden, half buried in snow. Curious, Oliver hurried toward it. Brushed the snow aside. It was a bell, a tiny silver sleigh bell. His breath caught. From the reindeer?" he whispered. He lifted the bell into his hands. It was warm, not from the sun, but from something deeper. He held it to his ear. For a long moment, nothing happened. A whisper of a sound, soft as falling snow. Oliver's heart leapt. He closed his fingers tightly around the bell. "I'll keep it safe," he promised the silent forest. "I'll keep it safe until next Christmas." And somewhere far above the clouds, where the north wind twined with the last glimmers of St. Nicholas's magic, a sleigh glided through silver skies. Santa felt a small tug of warmth in his pocket. An empty space where a tiny bell had once hung. He chuckled. "So he found it," he murmured. The reindeer snorted proudly. "Yes," Santa said softly. "He's a good one. A very good one indeed." He looked down toward Hollybrook, and with a warm, rumbling laugh that echoed like distant thunder, he flicked the reins. The sleigh rose higher into the shimmering sky. Christmas was nearly done, but one final visit remained. Chapter 6. The last gift of Christmas night evening settled gently over Hollybrook, painting the snow in shades of rose and lavender. The festivities of Christmas Day had quieted. Windows glowed warmly, families gathered for supper, and the scent of roasted chestnuts drifted through the air. Inside the Bennett cottage, the fire crackled softly. Margaret read her new book by the hearth, and Oliver sat beside her polishing the tiny silver bell he had found that morning. He held it carefully between his palms, as though afraid it might vanish if he let it go for even a moment. Their parents prepared tea in the kitchen, humming old carols while the kettle steamed. It was a perfectly ordinary, peaceful Christmas evening. And yet, Oliver couldn't shake the sense that something remained unfinished, as though the magic of the night before was not entirely gone, as though some last thread of wonder lingered in the air. Margaret glanced at him. "You've been awfully quiet." Oliver shrugged. "Just thinking." "About last night?" "About everything." He hesitated. "Do you think he'll come back?" Margaret smiled. "Of course, every Christmas Eve." Oliver shook his head softly. "No, I mean tonight." Margaret opened her mouth to answer, but in that moment a soft knock sounded at the door, as though carried by the wind. The entire room fell still. Their mother peeked out of the kitchen. Now who could that be on Christmas night? Their father wiped his hands and went to the door. Oliver's heart hammered in his chest. When the door opened, a swirl of snowy air drifted inside, and standing there, small in stature but wrapped in a thick green coat trimmed with fur, was a man neither child had ever seen before, except Oliver had seen his kind. "Good evening," the man said, bowing politely. His voice was crisp, musical, and impossibly old. "I hope I'm not intruding on your Christmas." Their father blinked. "Not at all. Can we help you?" The man smiled, and his eyes twinkled warmly. "I come with a message." He stepped inside just far enough to escape the cold. When his coat shifted, Oliver noticed something. A small embroidered sigil on the chest. A sleigh. 8 reindeer. A star. Oliver's breath caught an elf. A true Christmas elf. The man bowed again. "I am Thimblewick, historian of the Northern Workshop. I was sent on behalf of my master." Margaret gasped softly. Oliver's mouth fell open. You're "Master," Oliver echoed. Thimblewick smiled. "A man of red velvet and kindness, a man with a most recognizable laugh." Oliver bounced once where he stood. "Santa." Thimblewick chuckled. "Indeed." From within his coat, he produced a small wrapped parcel. It shimmered faintly, as though moonlight and starlight danced beneath the paper. He held it out to Oliver. He wished this to be delivered personally. Oliver took the parcel with trembling hands. For me?" "Yes," Thimblewick said softly. "He said you earned it." Margaret placed a gentle hand on her brother's shoulder. "Open it," she whispered. Oliver peeled the paper away. Inside was a book. A small, leather-bound book embossed with golden letters. "The Boy Who Believed." Oliver opened it, but instead of printed text, he saw moving images, tiny scenes made of light. There he was, peering out the window. There he was again, watching Santa by the hearth. There he was whispering his wish upon the hill. The final page glowed brighter than the rest. A message appeared in flowing golden script. To Oliver Bennett, who kept his eyes open and his heart open wider. "May you always hear the bells, St. Nicholas." Oliver felt warmth rise in his chest and settle behind his eyes. He hugged the book tightly. Thimblewick bowed once more. "My master also wished to return something that belongs to his reindeer." Oliver glanced up. Thimblewick tapped the silver bell. "It is yours now," the elf said. "A keepsake. Should you ever doubt again, ring it. Those who believe will always hear it." Oliver grinned. "I won't doubt. Not ever." Thimblewick pulled his hood up and stepped back toward the door. "Then remember this night, children of Hollybrook, for belief is a rare and precious thing." He paused, then added with a wink, "Oh, and do leave out an extra cookie next year. Blitzen complains when Santa doesn't share." With that, the elf disappeared into the swirling snow. The door shut gently behind him. The Bennets stood silently for a long moment. Then, Margaret whispered, "Oliver, you really did see him." Oliver held the book to his chest. "I told you." Their parents exchanged gentle, amazed glances, but Oliver was already looking toward the window. The sky was deep blue, the stars twinkled, the snow quieted to a soft hush, and then, very faint, almost like a memory, he heard it. Jingle, jing, jingle, jing. He gasped softly. Margaret leaned in. "Oliver, what is it?" Oliver smiled, a slow, wide, glowing smile. "Just the bells," he whispered. "He's saying good night." Outside, far above the clouds, a lone sleigh cut across the winter sky. The reindeer soared gracefully. Santa held the reins loosely, smiling down at the world he loved. "Sleep well, Oliver," he murmured. Then, raising his voice to the stars, he called, "Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night." And with a final burst of shimmering magic, the sleigh arched across the moonlight, leaving a trail of stardust behind